Um, so we're down one panelist as well, thanks to Hurricane Sandy. Jared from Undertone sadly can't be with us. But obviously we still, the show must go on. So without further ado, I'd like each of the panelists to kind of introduce themselves. Guys, if you could give your name, company you work for, and just quick 30, 60 seconds on what you do and a quick introduction to your company. Matt, should we start with you?
Sure. I'm Matt Tillman. I'm head of product at a company called SET. We are a media company that has built a contextual targeting platform that uses the image data and motion data from the videos themselves to figure out what kind of celebrities are in the video, what type of content it is, if it's baseball, basketball, or adult, as an example, content. We work with brands such as Disney and Microsoft in order to ensure that they're buying safe, relevant content.
My name is Mike Wan. I'm with Demand Media. We're a top 20 Comscore publisher we're passionate about content for real life. And what that means on a day like today is, some of the things that we've created content on is how to make a keg out of a pumpkin for Halloween parties, as well as, like the top 10 creepiest places on earth, things like that. We are one of the largest YouTube content providers, and some of the brands that you might know us for are brands like eHow, Livestrong.com, Crack.com, and TypePath.
I want to see the top 10 creepiest places, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Philip Grote with Comscore, and since there's so many people here, let me explain what we're doing. We measure everything that happens on the internet, at least we're trying to. Some things we're better at, some things we're worse at. Agencies use our tools to plan their campaigns and also measure the performance of their campaigns. Publishers and ad networks on the other side use our tools to position their audience and their properties. We also have a tool that measures brand safety, and that's why I'm on the panel here today.
Great stuff. Thank you, gentlemen. So I'd like to start off by kind of throwing a question out to the panel about how agencies and advertisers are thinking about brand safety. So I think today it seems fairly clear that most advertisers, or certainly most agencies in their media planning, are controlling for brand safe environments by very limited and restricted media plans. So it seems there's a definite preference for purchasing NBC, CBS, Hulu, very large kind of big name branded publishers. There's obviously a huge mid-tail of inventory out there among kind of mid to long-tail publishers who are perhaps getting the minority, a disproportionate minority, i.e. less than perhaps they deserve on a volume basis of the dollars. Do we see that as continuing? Do agencies continue to control brand safety by restrictive media plans, or do you think technology becomes a big part of solving that problem? Maybe that's a good one for Matt to start off with.
Yeah, well, I think agencies have the responsibility to find the right audience for their brand. And I think when you go to an NBC or a CBS or even a Hulu on the tier 2 side, you're limiting your scale, right? You're limiting the audience that your brand can have access to, or that your brand wants access to. And so as soon as you start going into the tier 3 sources, the ad networks, the brand safety becomes much more critical, because now your brand is effectively sponsoring unknown content. And with unknown content runs a lot of risk. And so some brands are very risk averse, and others are less so. And so I think the agencies are being pushed into the mid and long tail, the torso, if you will. And I think technology providers such as us and others as well, Comscore as well, are trying to help brands better address that mid to long tail inventory. But I think it is from the agency that we're seeing the push into the mid and long tail.
So Matt, without turning it into a kind of blatant promotion, can you talk a little bit about how, or maybe you can, talk a little bit about how SET addresses brand safety, and primarily kind of what aspects of your solution you feel are kind of most being driven or most demanded from agencies? Like, are there any particular things, whether it be in-stream analysis or contextual analysis, that seem to be the real drivers of demand from advertisers?
Sure. Yeah, we actually started out by analyzing the video content itself and using texture and motion data in order to determine whether or not it was, we just started with adult content detection actually, because that seemed to be the biggest risk, right, for a brand advertiser. We found that the demand was really more of a holistic targeting and filtering solution to allow them to decide what's brand safe for that brand, right? I mean, an Axe body spray is going to be very different than a Procter & Gamble brand or a Pampers or someone like that. And so what we really focused on was kind of in the most detailed way finding all of those elements that could lead to an unsafe brand environment, such as violence or things like that, carnage, things of that nature, and just kind of gave them the tools and said, you determine what's safe or not for your brand, and so that's how we solve the problem. I think the other piece about our solution is, and it's not unlike what other people are trying to do as well, is that we focused on the unit of inventory. And a lot of times people focus at the publisher level. They say, well, Demand Media, you guys have really great publishers, and we know which publishers you have, Crack or something like that. We know the type of content that's on that. And they're valuing the publisher level instead of the unit of inventory. And that was the really big trick, is that Justin TV or someone like that may be a great publisher, but if they offer user uploads, then there's always a chance that something could slide in there. Mm-hmm. And so we really wanted to pay, we wanted to give the publishers credit where they're doing a really great job of producing fantastic content, and then at the other time limiting the risk for the advertiser to run on something else that may be on the site.
So that maybe leads on to an interesting question for Mike, which is, as a company that effectively is a group of individual properties, how, when Demand Media goes to advertisers, what level of insight is Demand providing to advertisers about which properties within the group they're serving on? And then even within that, you've obviously got properties that are owned and operated, but certainly inventory that is occurring off-site, so on YouTube. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that and where you see the advertiser demand, whether you see them differentiating between your owned and operated versus your YouTube inventory, and then also talk a little bit about syndication and how concerns around brand safety might impact that.
Absolutely, thank you. So as far as Demand Media and how we think about things, I mean, since we create and generate all of our own content, brand safety is one of the utmost concerns that we have when it comes to thinking about how we curate, create, and sort of distribute this content. To date, we've done it on our owned and operated properties, and we've really sort of promoted that as the sort of core offering to advertisers. It's resonating incredibly well in the fact that you have a brand safe environment that we 100% control, and the content and the nature of what we develop is matches down with sort of what people are truly interested in. As I was mentioning earlier, really the stuff that people are passionate about for what they do on a day-by-day basis. What's interesting for us is we made a very conscious bet early on, sort of pre-technology like that, to really think about our distribution and syndication channels from two perspectives. One is creating the best experience on the O&O so we can go and sell that inventory in a meaningful basis to the advertisers. And second is when we thought about YouTube, unlike thinking about the whole cluster of YouTube and what have you, really creating a channel that is fully vetted, fully scaled, and where we put all of our inventory there. Some of the cool things that we got out of that is because it is within a contained environment and the architecting of how we get access to that inventory, both on the YouTube seller side and us. I mean, it really has created a brand safe enough environment for what we deem to be sort of sellable to the advertisers, and that the advertisers are happy with. Taking it to the next level, one of the questions that we've always thought about is how do you drive sort of incremental scale? How do you drive to the opportunity, either syndication to the outer networks and what have you? And that's one of the things that we've been thinking about, especially upcoming in this year, is how do we take this to the next level in a brand safe environment engagement? Thinking about it from our content perspective is perfectly fine. Then it's about the surrounding environments, whether or not it's at the right engagement. Are you doing this on a sort of, even within a series of videos that's being viewed? Are you behind another video that may not necessarily matches with the brand? Are you sort of in a place in which you're getting the right engagement? I mean, those are all the things that we're thinking about, and I think we've taken the first hurdle, which is because we own the content and we have the ability to really curate and create based on sort of the demand in the marketplace. It's been fantastic. Now it's how do we take that to the next scale and get that to the audience where they are.
So it sounds as if advertisers are not really discriminating between inventory that's on your owned and operated sites and your YouTube channel.
Right.
Is there a concern that without those additional brand safety kind of tools behind the scenes, a further syndication strategy outside of a known entity like YouTube might be less desirable for advertisers?
Absolutely. I mean, and the way that the rule of thumb with agencies and advertisers is just absolute transparency on where they, where the content is going to be running. As you think about scale, though, you have to think about above and beyond, so you own and operated properties, and also YouTube as one single destination. Like you have to provide the content to where people are when they're most interested in that type of piece of content. Yep. And the question comes down to, once you start looking at that permutation, I mean, the amount of pieces that you have to vet in order to get absolute definitive clarity for the advertiser, becomes more and more difficult as you go down the hurdle. Every advertiser has a different set of constraints, and every advertiser has a different set of sort of quality metrics that they're looking for in sort of where they want to see their content. So for us, it's to create that right ecosystem play, but more importantly, to have the right pieces in motion to make sure that when the advertiser is coming to us, we're going to be able to say, hey, here's the portfolio opportunities. Tell us what your quality requirements are, and then let us even cluster an audience around that.
Yeah. So it sounds as if there's certainly kind of things that one can do as a publisher to make sure that one is kind of maintaining a certain standard of environment for one's advertisers. I think maybe moving on to Philip, there's a kind of question around the actual planning phase and what companies like Comscore, that are obviously a key cornerstone of the agency's media planning process, what they can do to provide additional brand safety information during that planning phase, perhaps pre-impression or even perhaps pre-budget allocation.
All right, thank you for that. Currently, the way that agencies plan for brand safety, they're trying to stay a little bit with the premium publishers, but this already is based on a misconception. Premium doesn't necessarily mean brand safe, because as we discussed, brand safety means different things for different companies. As a car company, you don't want your ad next to a recall notice. So even if it's premium, you still have to have brand safety measures in place. So companies like SET are really awesome, and also, eHow and Demand Media, they own and operate the content, so they have control over it, so you can be sure it is safe. However, if you go outside that owned and operated content with ad networks and other publishers, then you have a bigger problem. And their solutions like Comscore Validated Campaign Impressions tries to help out the agency so they can track the brand safety in flight of the campaign. The advantage that these guys have is, have you guys seen Minority Report? Can I see a show of hands? Everybody still awake? Minority Report, there we go. So it will make sense in a second, right? So these guys are really in a pre-crime environment, right? You've got to look at him as Tom Cruise. He can prevent crime.
Thank you.
It's not the first time that
analogy's
been made.
Yeah.
Lovely.
They can prevent crime before it happens, catch the violation before. Outside of that environment, you really only have the chance to oftentimes block it after the fact, especially in real-time bidding environments. Now, Comscore's tools allows you to really also block that in real time, so it's kind of Minority Report, but not as solid as these guys have that for their own and operated content. So we see agencies use that and apply that across the board and block the ads depending on their own subjective brand safety standards.
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about the ad exposed solution? So obviously, video throws up its own unique kind of complexities. In-stream analysis is clearly something that's very challenging. Certain companies like SET obviously looking to solve that, but display has certainly also got brand safety challenges. What are the kind of things that can be easily transposed from display-centric kind of in-page analysis and in-page brand safety? What are those kind of technologies can be easily applied to video? What is not so relevant either? I mean, any kind of analysis or ideas about how video can learn from web-based brand safety?
Yeah. So what's easy to transpose there, and he's mentioning the ad exposed solution, with Comscore acquired those to fold this into the Validated Campaign Essentials solution, is that the solution really does page analysis. So analyzing the text and the environment of the page, also categorizing the page where it is in, and then making a blocking decision. And that applies also for video content, especially when it's distributed, because you never really know what sites it ends up on. And if you don't control the site itself, you have to have a brand safety solution there in place. So that works. The challenge with video is really, like Mike talked about or touched on, is what about the other videos I'm in stream with? And there's very little control of, unless you have SET or Demand Media and can control that. So that's a little bit of a challenge.
Good stuff. So Matt, obviously, as someone who's kind of focused on the product side, can you give us a little bit of maybe a little bit of insight as to some of the areas that you see as not solved yet, but that are challenges where you guys are going to be investing in future, or areas where you feel like the industry overall has a big problem that hasn't yet been solved?
Yeah, so I think the biggest trick is that the more networks that come into the displays, come from the display space into video, they still treat it as an environment where they can value things at the publisher level. And as we've learned from display, which was my background as well, is that you can ignore banner ads, but you cannot ignore a pre-roll. So your brand is putting their stamp on this video that you're about to watch, and if that video if that's negative from a brand image standpoint, then they're effectively sponsoring a bad program, a bad show. And especially as TV dollars start to move over, which we are seeing, they expect to know exactly the types of content that they're buying, right? And so I think industry-wide, we need to think a little bit more about the unit of inventory that people are purchasing, which is the video, and a little bit less maybe about the page, although using that page data because it's extremely relevant as a first-tier source, but then adding to it the complexity of analyzing video itself. And there are a couple ways to go about analyzing video. On the product side, one thing that we were faced with was, say we have 60 million videos a month that we have to analyze. How many people is that going to take, right? Is it a people problem? Is it a human solution? Or is it a technology one? And obviously it's a technology solution, because otherwise you're hiring, 4,000 people for 24/7 a month to actually watch that amount of video. So we built a system to solve this, to actually watch that video. And now we're seeing growth from the algorithmic standpoint of adding audio track to that, adding new types of face detection and recognition algorithms to find out, who's in the video and what they're up to. And I think that's always something we're pushing ourselves on a little bit, because not too many other people in the industry are trying to solve the video level problem.
So it's interesting. I mean, the problem that you're solving for really is a qualitative sort of brand safety approach for the publishers. I mean, for the advertisers. From our perspective, I mean, the part of the reason why I think the branded publishers and the folks who are investing in content creation and brand safe content will always continue to have a sort of place in this world, is that those pieces of content have sort of very legitimate sort of interest and value and engagement. And for us, we think that unlike chasing after sort of a lot of UGC stuff that basically has sort of large pops and then sort of kind of goes away, there's sort of fundamental values in sort of what you're investing in, and there's going to be a long-term sort of value to the advertisers that's associated with it. In looking at those pieces, I mean, perfect example would be we've actually created some content around finance and banking for like Bank of America. And these are pieces of content in which they target very specific subject matters in very specific niche areas, and we happen to have the audience to be able to match and support that piece of it as well. In that sort of environment, it's kind of the perfect storm, the best of all worlds. You have the brand safe environment, you have the content that's created that's got a particular sort of subject voice and experience, and then you also have the right engagement factors associated with it. So part of our whole philosophy is, there are certain categories in which folks are always going to be interested in, and there's always things that are going to drive a certain amount of engagement. The distribution of those, we actually have opportunities in which we talk to the advertisers and say, hey, if you would like to use this on your properties, syndicate it elsewhere, we're going to let you have the opportunity to do so. And so we're taking it from sort of, instead of the sort of pre-crime approach, right? We took it the pre-crime, which is, here's what we're going to be doing. You've already got it staged, so now the question is that what the advertiser's looking for, how we can engage with you? And once we create it, we already know the audience is there.
So specifically, actually turning that whole brand safety issue kind of on its head. It's reversing that concept by saying we're actually going to create content specifically for the needs of this advertiser.
That's right.
And has that been a very popular program so far?
It's been great. It's been great. It's one of the questions has always been, there's a lot of things out there, unfortunately, that advertisers have huge amount of interest in creating content for. And the question always comes down to how much audience can you actually deliver to that?
Yep.
So which takes it to the next level of actual brand safety again, which is, if they want to take it and syndicate it outside of sort of a controlled environment. At that point, we've sort of lost control at that point if they're going to go out there and syndicate it.
Yep.
But when they come to us and say, hey, can you go and syndicate it elsewhere? I mean, that's kind of the next approach that we're taking next year.
I mean, I think one of the interesting trends that I think we're all kind of talking about here is almost indirectly we're as an industry setting a bar for ourselves that I think is almost higher than perhaps traditional broadcast TV, because it is possible to analyze on a real-time basis. We're saying, well, we have to do that and we have to deliver that solution. Do you think, Mike, that publishers on the internet are being held to a higher set of standards in terms of brand safety than in broadcast TV?
I certainly think that there's, the bar for broadcast television is very much on a programmatic scale, right? It's like you know that you're going to be associated with X, Y, and Z sort of a product or like whatever show it might be, and you know that you're going to be delivering a certain experience. For us, it's now above and beyond that, especially with RTB, how folks are thinking about, like, I want to buy this particular audience at this particular video engagement, but I don't know where it is. I mean, there's now sort of these multiples of hurdles that we have to stand to, and I think that makes it difficult to scale. So one of the questions that I would definitely ask the agencies is like, at what point, like which levers are you willing to sort of operate on, or are you willing to soften up on to get you scale, or which ones are you willing to tighten up on and to get you the very granular audience that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly seems to be a trend towards GRP-based buying. So do we think, maybe this is a kind of question for Philip, obviously with VCE and throwing a softball here, but do you think that advertisers are going to move to that GRP-based buying? And if so, does brand safety become less about trying to find users that are engaged in your message and kind of in the mindset of your particular brand, or thinking about finance products right now, therefore it's a great opportunity for Bank of America, and brand safety really does become about blocking violence, blocking pornography, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the two parts to that question. One is, do we see digital advertisers now requesting GRPs? And I see that happening more and more often, and I think the reason for that is, and Matt alluded to that, a lot of TV money is now coming online, and those TV buyers are really used to report out their GRPs. And now when they have the TV and the digital buy, they also want to see the digital GRP. Now, before we report out the digital GRP, it's important to clean that GRP up. And one of the cleanup measures you have to apply is, was it a brand safety impression? Only then included into the GRP. Was it viewable? Was it served to human traffic, target audience in the right geography? And if you have all those 5 components, you have a really clean GRP that you can use to compare to TV. And again, actually the standards here are higher than in the offline world. However, we shouldn't forget the other effectiveness measures that we have online. I think GRP were used offline because they didn't have anything else to do and to measure it against that was really scalable. But online, we have so many other things to measure success, and we shouldn't keep track of those.
Yeah, I'd actually like to just comment on that a little bit, because I think you're right in that in the offline world they didn't have much more than survey data to kind of go from, right? And then they'd extrapolate from the survey data. One thing that's a big initiative for us is to help TV buyers buy online, to buy digital like they buy television. And what we found is that GRP solutions are the true mathematical calculation of a GRP online, which is great, but a lot of them are based on a combination of display and video, and then it's display paired alongside of video. So when you talk about video specifically, you really want an apples-to-apples environment, and it's very difficult to get that online. And so one of the big initiatives that we just completed actually was a partnership that allows TV buyers to buy program-specific, so show-specific, across the mid and long tail through our network, because we can recognize actors that are in particular shows. We can recognize, American Idol as being different than X Factor, as an example, and you can actually target that exact show content and then get a ratings point back that's based on that show. And so it's video-specific GRPs, and that was one trick for us that was just taking it beyond display and focusing squarely on how do we provide the best solution for video explicitly, or video specifically. And And it was really, I'd say it was really difficult because none of the systems were set up to actually do that. And so that did require a lot of work.
Yeah. It sounds like in order to be able to deliver that kind of level of targetability, though, it sounds like real-time bidding is kind of key to being able to see enough inventory. And then if an advertiser has set those very, very granular targeting rules, the ability to kind of purchase on a per impression basis becomes more important to be able to get that level of granularity. Is real-time bidding something you think that can add value to brand safety, or is it actually just multiply the problem and make it even more complex to deal with?
Well, we love it because it does make it more complex for everyone that doesn't have a targeting solution to do it. So we think it's fantastic. So the more inventory that's on RTB, the better. So please demand, put as much on there as possible. Because it is very easy for us, whereas it's much more difficult for someone to analyze every single impression that they're going to buy. For us, we watch every single video before we serve the impression, and then we show that exact video back to the advertiser that purchased it, so they can see provably transparent, right? So a lot of times the networks are just black boxes, and we wanted to make sure that we gave them added value over what just an RTB platform would bring. So that is important to us.
Yeah, for us, I mean, we really look at GRP really as a common currency sort of equivalence. So the question always comes down to, if you can get equivalent standardizing of what the television buyers are expecting, as well as if you can get parity on what the sort of online GRP truly is going to be related to. Brand safety as obviously a core measure of this. I mean, for us, it comes down to really having the right pieces and all the right requirements in place in order for us to do that translation to A to B. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting, and I think we're going to hear a lot more of in the next, I mean, especially both for publishers and also for agencies in the next 12 months, is that the dollars are going to be shifting, and you're starting to see that influx now, but the requirements right now are more stringent and more restrictive than to allow us to be able to open that floodgate and get the dollars across. So, I mean, I'm definitely curious to see like how this next 12 months and what you guys are doing going to be able to hopefully change the landscape and open the floodgates.
So, Mike, a little bit of a topic slightly off the kind of core brand safety, but very much on the GRP issue, is targetability and kind of knowing pre-impression whether a given impression is actually going to contribute to the in-market or in-target GRP that the advertiser is looking for. So I think one of the problems that we've been seeing and coming up a lot in the publishers that we at LiveRail serve is seeing an issue where an advertiser has told a publisher, we're looking to reach X number of 18 to 24-year-old males, but not providing any ability to target their definition of 18 to 24-year-old males before serving an impression. So a publisher has to basically serve 10 million impressions, and then only afterwards hopefully find out that out of those 10 million, enough were in market.
That's exactly the thing I was mentioning, which is the standardization and also having the right common sort of denominators to track against. I mean, you look at what Comscore is doing, you look at what Nielsen has done with GRP, Active GRP, and you look at Google's GRP product as well. Comparing all of those, and if I said, look, run the same campaign, tell me what your GRP stands on each one of these, I mean, you actually end up with a very different sort of metric from each one. And we don't know exactly what the agencies are sort of determining against, and then the amount of loss that we have to sort of incur in order to get the fulfillment. I mean, actually decreases the amount of yield that we generate from the actual inventory.
So I know our friends at Nielsen, their comment has been that publishers need to move to a world in which they price for waste. Which is
it's a tough one.
It's hard for most publishers to get comfortable with. Does VCE provide a better solution for this, or is that the same kind of strategy?
All these tools that are trying to help you assess that are just different versions of the truth, and everybody really has to pick what methodology, what service level are you most comfortable with. So I can't really say one is better than the other, even though I'm strongly biased towards the Comscore solution for natural reasons. But there are different methodologies out there to assess that. I think in this current phase, it's more important than to look at the absolute numbers, is how you improve them or how the different publishers perform within your buy, right? Because we are all learning right now, and in the industry, we want to get more of the TV dollars. So the onus is on us to really make that work. and just looking at an absolute number and shoving it back in the publisher's face and say, hey, you didn't do good enough, I don't think it's the right approach. A better approach would be, hey, can we improve that? Let's look at the placements. Let's look at this. Let's look at your relative performance as one of the 3 publishers within my buy and see how we get you up in the top tier.
So do you think that then ultimately we move to a world in which the agency is effectively obligated to use a DSP to be able to make those decisions? So even for what they would consider a direct buy, they have to use some kind of real-time bidding technology on the agency side to take responsibility for making those optimizations? Or does it remain that kind of model of buy and adjust, buy and adjust?
We see different models there. One is to adjust in flight, that really goes per email, sending an email to your publisher when you see something, and then you have the real-time bidding environment where you can make the adjustments much faster. We see both of that. I think in the future, due to automation, I think a big part will move over to real-time bidding.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about cross-platform? So clearly we're seeing more and more users watching more and more video on iPads and iPhones. I know my own personal habits. I would say I probably now watch 2/3 of my video content on my iPad. So do we see mobile and cross-platform creating any specific challenges to brand safety? Does it create, from SET's perspective, any kind of unique challenges of perhaps non-flash environments or different screen sizes?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, and this definitely isn't SET specific, is most of the solutions that are out there focus on the page level data. And the trick with that is you don't have a page when it's a mobile environment. So you can't scrape or analyze or do any of the things, spider, or do any of the things that we're used to doing traditionally. So that's really, really tough. And then from a set-top box point of view, it's kind of the same thing where it's you get a resource locator to an instance on a CDN, so like Akamai, and that's it. You get the actual piece of content to analyze, and that's really, so you actually have to have a video analysis solution in place.
Yep.
And then the other side of this is that a lot of mobile video isn't video. So just to be very explicit about that, a lot of mobile video is actual pre-roll running on top of a game environment or something like that. And I think that advertisers certainly don't know that, and agencies don't realize that a lot of the time either, is that it's pre-roll on an ad. So it's effectively rich media display inventory that they're paying
That's right.
a massive CPM for. And it actually undercuts the guys that do this like Demand, where you guys actually produce video content at a really high quality and a really good CPM, and then that gets lumped into the campaign as well. So I think those are kind of the big challenges when it comes to mobile. Although you see that in traditional web as well, people throwing video content into banners and then calling it video.
Yeah, I mean, our sellers are in the market, and one of the conversations that we always have is, if you're looking for a scaled sort of video approach and you're looking for quality content, I mean, one of the first questions is, all right, you're looking for a lot of pre-rolls. What exactly are you pre-rolling against? Are you doing sort of pre-game? Are you doing a sort of really just an interstitial experience at 15 seconds? Or are you truly doing a pre-roll content engagement on top on a streaming piece of video? And that definition, I mean, I think there's been, sort of the market has blurred it for the pure reason that you're trying to get scale.
Yep.
But at the same time, as scale sort of continues to evolve, and as content quality gets better at scale, that piece of it hopefully will go away, and then you have true pre-rolls, and you have sort of true engagement. And when it comes to mobile, for us, we think about it from a perspective of, it's about the right user engagement. If they come in from a Facebook link, but it's a referred piece of content as one of ours, I mean, we know that when we get that user, they're going to get the perfect experience. And we know that it's coming in from mobile, so we optimize for that sort of a delivery. And when it comes down to thinking about how we're going to be syndicating this or moving forward, it's really coming to how do we what are the right environments? Sony Bravia, Roku, different sort of set-top box experiences, Google TV, and then creating the appropriate channels where you can have the right brand safe sort of walls in place, so that you can literally say, hey, advertiser, if you're interested in sort of set-top box, here's your distribution channels. Which ones are you interested in? Is this a sort of high-end product that you're looking for that's got a large amount of sort of HD content, or are you looking for something that is really a sort of a small tablet handset experience that has lower stream bit rate, but has the right content at the right engagement time.
And do you think that advertisers are continuing to kind of choose their environment in terms of devices, or even to the point of games versus actual true pre-roll video? Are they viewing those as different environments, or are they actually viewing, or are they going to move, or are they viewing it today, or do you think they will move to an environment where they see a screen as a screen, and if it's a full screen environment and a full screen viewer experience of their brand message, that they value that equally?
So for us, I mean, we're getting more line items on our IOs every day, right? We're having it broken down into mobile web, broken down to iPad traffic, broken down to, like set-top boxes, et cetera. That I don't think is going to go away, simply because I think there's a certain amount of sort of measure and performance that they want to see, and they want to show their clients that hey, we're buying in multiple devices. It would be great if there's one day we can say, hey, here's a standard metric, here's what a pre-roll is like, it's against content, and we trust you to run it across all your channels. Right now, that's not a single line item, and it's. I hope it'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, is that a question of measurement, either for Philip or
Yeah,
anyone?
absolutely. I mean, we see that. We see that happening. A lot of agencies buy more and more video and more mobile. And like Mike said, it's really a question of cool devices, because oftentimes they didn't really vet, do I get an incremental reach? But just because they need to go back to the client and say, oh, of course I have mobile on your plan. Of course I do. And here it is. So the challenge then becomes, next to quality, also see, does it help me? Do I get incremental reach, or do I reach the same people over and over again? So Comscore is working there on a multi-platform solution where you can see your unduplicated reach, TV, video, mobile video, and PC video, and mobile across the board, so you know what is your true reach. And that's one of the important factors, because mobile, just for the sake of mobile, doesn't really do anything. You got to know, do I hit an incremental audience?
That's right.
I mean, that's certainly technically, I would imagine, a very difficult problem to solve. Without giving away any secret sauce, can you talk a little bit about how that problem ultimately gets solved? How do you know if the user is different?
Much smarter people than I are working on that, and we're actually about ready to release that. But it's a combination of different data sources and something we call a dynamic panel that helps us deduplicate against the different audiences. But it's too technical to go into much detail.
Okay, great stuff. So I think we're kind of reaching kind of towards the end of our time. Obviously, if anyone has any kind of questions or comments or any areas that we didn't touch on in terms of brand safety and video that you'd like us to kind of discuss quickly, if anyone has anything, we're happy to do that. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you for joining us. Hurricane allowing. Thank you.
Thank you.